Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Ayin Daled Sif Vov. Halacha Vov. Says the Mechaber, Ein levarech achar yain shebesu'uda. You don't have to make an al Hagefen, the normal bracha after wine, for wine drunk during the meal. The birchas hamazon poitarte, because benching will cover it. V'chein poteres yain shelifnei hamazon. And not only that, it will even cover wine that was drunk before the meal even began. V'afilu even if you just drank wine before the Suda and you didn't actually have any during the meal, the Birchas HaMazon is patters that wine. V'ayin lekam and soif simen ayin reish beis. Ule'inyan yayin shel Havdalah shelifnei HaMazon ayin lekam and simen reish tes sifches. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, ein levarach the Birchas HaMazon patartar. You don't have to make an al Hagefen on wine. Kedin dvarim haboy machmas hasuda, because it's got a din. The wine that you drank during the meal has got a din of dvarim haboy machmas hasuda sheniftar be'berachas hamazon. It's part of the suda, and therefore it's covered by berachas hamazon. K'mesh kos v'sim kuf ayin zayin. The hayayin machmas hasuda hu choshev the bal lishros hamaychel, because the benefit of the wine is that it helps digest and settle the food, and therefore it's considered machmas hasuda. For after bracha rishonim b'bracha layan, you make a separate bracha, and it's not so toffel to the meal because it has its own bracha. Kanal b'sif aleph. Nonetheless, bracha Achrona lei. It doesn't have its own bracha Achrona because birchas hamazon will cover it. And not only the wine you have during the meal, even the wine you have before the meal. The kivin sheboim, says the Mishnah Berurah Chavdaled, the kivin sheboim liftach hamiayim, since it comes to sort of open up the digestive system, lahamshich adam latayvis hamaychel, and to get the juices flowing. Havigamkein kidvarim haboim machmas hasuda is considered as something which is machmas hasuda. Opashat dezeh dafka im sheise samach lemazon al kol ponim tavika schalta desuda. It's got to be the wine that was drunk pretty close to the meal. So, for example, you make kiddush on Friday night. Miss Hashem, tomorrow night we'll make kiddush, and then you go into the meal. You don't have to make an al Hagefen on that wine, not straight afterwards, and not after the meal, because it's covered by the Birchas HaMazon. How long beforehand? So, interestingly, in 29, he quotes Rabbi Yashiv that he says if you drink wine chatzi shah lifnei hasuda, then tzarich levarech bracha Achrona. So, for example, you start the meal at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you're drinking wine at 6:15. If it's more than half an hour before, then that's not considered part of the Suda. It's got to be within half an hour, really. 28 is an interesting one. He talks about mitzvah novim. So, all right, we'll leave it. There's a diyun about that, but it's footnote 28. Okay, chafei. Yes, so we said vafilu lo haylo yain b'teich hamazon. Even if you didn't have any wine during the meal, the birchas hamazon covers it. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chafei, bot kach tzorich loima, because you add the word loyin. V'rotz loima the after oz l'shayich loima dehushtia achas im eila sheb'teich hasuda afilu hachi poiter tehein atzim bechlal sudahein, because it's considered part of the meal. Or the Indian mayim washarim mashkin shesheisa kodim hamazon. And in reference to other drinks that you have before the meal, you don't drink during the meal. Some Achronim, many Achronim hold that if you drink other drinks before the meal, that requires a bracha Achrona. It's not really shaykh to the Suda, so you can't say that Birchas HaMazon is going to cover other drinks. Unless it's like a stronger drink, which is like wine. But that's not our practice. If you have something, I guess if you have a drink, it seems that if you have a wine before the meal, and certainly wine during the meal, then the Birchas HaMazon will cover it. But if you have other drinks before the meal, then I guess it seems like you've got to make a brain nefashos on those before you go into the meal. Okay, Chavvav, Ayin Lekam B'Sof Siman Ayin Reish Beis, Sif Yud, L'Inyan Kiddush, the Sham Mavua, there it says, the Gam Bay Birchas HaMazon Partarto, that the Birchas HaMazon covers is the after bracha for the wine. However, the Havdalah is different. When you make Havdalah and you drink the wine, that wine is not the tzorech hasuda. Take a look over there, because there we write, if you didn't make a bracha before the meal, don't make any further bracha. But if you're Birchas Hamazon, it will be covered by Birchas Hamazon. With the Indian in Paitz Birchas Hamazon and Yain Sheshasa Achar Gemara Suda, and in regard to the wine that you have after the meal, then Yesh Deis Papoiskim, which we discussed this yesterday. Yesh Omrim Dein Birchas Hamazon Petarta. Some say that no, Birchas Hamazon, if you drank it after the meal, Birchas Hamazon is not going to pater it. You need to make its own Hagefen. Imlo Shekivein Behedjem Birchas Hamazon if to Gamayain. The Ospat B'diavad K'mavu B'Simen Reish Chesif Zayin. That's one opinion. For Yesh Omrim Dein Tzorich Levarich Bracha Achrona Birchas Hamazon Pocher B'Stoma Aflechat Chila. And others say no, even if you drink after you finished eating at the end of the meal, you're sitting sort of at dessert time and you're sipping some wine, it will still be covered by Birchas Hamazon. Miu. Ein din zeh motzu beineinu. In any event, says the Mishnah Berurah, it's not really relevant so much for us. Lefi hamavur lekam b'simin kufayin zayin, the ein onu moishchin yodeinu min apas ad Birchas Hamazon. We don't consider the meal finished until you actually bench. So if you choose to have wine at the end of the meal, that's still considered part of the meal, and therefore will certainly be covered by Birchas Hamazon. Im kein hava kol b'kabetei chasuda Birchas Hamazon poitrei. But it's better to have in mind specifically during Birchas Hamazon to cover it. So just to summarize, Sivov, what have we said? That even though Birchas Hayayin requires its own bracha during the meal, it does not require an after bracha. The Birchas Hamazon will cover it, and you don't need to make an Hagefen, and not only wine during the meal, but even wine before the meal. So if you just had Kiddush before the meal, and you didn't even have any wine during the meal, Birchas Hamazon will cover it. Okay.
Does Hagefen cover other drinks as well?
Yeah.
Wine
Yes. So ordinarily, yes. So it's dealt with a little bit in that footnote, but generally speaking, I'll tell you an interesting thing. If, say, for example, you have fruit, you have grapes, or any of the Shivas Haminim, and you then have other Borei Eitz fruit. So you have grapes and you have apples and mangoes. So you make a Borei Pri Ha'etz on the grape, and that covers also the apples and also the mangoes. And then when you make an ala peiros, that covers everything. However, if you have grapes and apples and mangoes, and you have also Borei Pri Adoma fruit, for example, melons, pineapple, then the ala eitz will only cover the Borei Pri Eitz fruits, but not the Borei Pri Adoma fruit. So then you would need to make a Borei Nefashos. So it's not so well known that. Yeah. Okay. What?
No, you won't not have a Paris.
You make halaperas for the grapes. Yeah, halaperas. Yeah, but if you have Borei Pri Adoma fruit, for example, melons, you make a separate Borei Nefashos on that. It will not be covered by the halaperas. Yeah. Okay, Zayin. Let's do Zayin quickly. Im ein lo yayin. If a person didn't have any wine, v'shose, and that's the standard drink in those days during the meal. So if he doesn't have wine, v'shose ma'im shamaska, and he drinks, and therefore he has to drink other drinks. Ein levarich aleihem. You don't need to make a separate bracha on that. Again, it's considered part of the meal, so we're very used to that. You have a glass of water, orange juice, Coke, whatever during the meal. Does not need a separate bracha. It's considered part of the suda. Because it's not the way to eat without drinking. And the truth is, wine really wouldn't need a bracha itself. And because it's chashivas, wine is considered a very choshev drink, therefore Chazal will masakin that you make a special bracha. But other drinks are not choshev, and therefore they do not require their own bracha. Even if a person is very thirsty before the meal, the feeling at the time, I think, was that if you were to drink water before the meal, it's dangerous. And therefore, it's the pas will pater it. Let's just do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Asif Aleph Koy. It's going on the very beginning of this siman. Bracha Rishona af b'toich hasuda mishum chashivos, like we said. Aval ashar mashkin, no, but you don't make a bracha on other drinks, then it's folim lasuda because they're toffel, they're subordinate to the meal. Kaboy machmas hasuda b'toich hasuda, the mavu b'simin kufayin zayin, the ein mevarech alein, the niftarim b'berachas hamoitzi. The einam tunim bracha lo lifneim le'lachrem. You don't make a bracha on drinks, on the Coke, beforehand, a shahakol, nor a Borei Nefashos afterwards. Even if you drink after you finish the meal, L'didon de'ein onu moishchin yadeinu min hapas v'choshev hakol b'teich hasuda. For us, we don't finish the meal until we actually bench, so therefore it is considered part of the meal. Hamayim, aliberikon is considered dangerous, I guess, in those days, maybe even today, I don't know, to drink on an empty stomach. V'hu hadin b'shari mashkin. Okay, that's that. Now let's carry on. V'yesh omrim, the last two words on the page. V'yesh omrim. There is a school of thought which says that you do make a bracha on liquids, on drinks during the meal. That every time you drink, you make a new bracha. Because each time you drink, you're choosing to drink afresh, and therefore it would require a new bracha. If you want to avoid any halachic uncertainty, you make a shahakal beforehand on the drink, and that intends to cover all drinks during the meal. However, says the Ramah, which is what we do, and that is we do not make any brachas on any drinks during the meal. That's what the Ramah says. Let's just do the Mishnah Berurah quickly on all of this. V'yesh omrim lamed beis. Hainu bracha rishona. The Sfir Lahu, the Yesh Omer holds that you do make brachas on drinks during the meal. The Dinah Perish it's got the same status of fruit that you have during the meal, which you do make a bracha on. The Tzarech bracha lifneim, avon bracha Achrona lekula alma niftar mebrachas hamazon. But on the bracha Achrona, everyone agrees benching will cover it. Hamayim v'hu adin l'sha'akol hamashkin lav dafka water, any other drink. V'af agav the yayin chashvinan le machmas hasuda. Even though wine is considered machmas hasuda, derak mishum chashivos tzarech bracha levuchana, like we said before. Yayin shani desoid libetvei. Wine satiates. V'gam debola hamshich tav sachil, and also it arouses an appetite. Masha'enke in shar mashkin, as opposed to other liquids. B'chol pam, and the Yeshua says there are those who say that even every time you have a drink, you would make a bracha. V'afla de'azu, even according to this opinion, dafka b'mayim amrina de misama nimlachu. Dafka with water, it's nimlach, that each time you're choosing afresh to have a glass of water. You only drink when you're thirsty, and therefore each time you've quenched your thirst, the next time is a new drinking session. And other fancier drinks is not considered nimlach. So therefore, I guess Coke and things like that, it's considered more of a choshev drink maybe, and even according to this opinion, you'd make one bracha. Ach licorice for and these sort of sweet drinks, the ein shoysen kiyim letzomei, dinim kamei mayim ledeazu, that's got a din of water. Okay. Keidim netila, dela'ach netila ein lehafsik b'shtias mashkin shel rishus, v'havdalah desif daled, shani mishum de'asa lechol keidim avdalah, because like we said, you can't drink before avdalah. B'mokum su'udasei, v'lo yeshanim mekayma, you shouldn't change your place, your location in the middle of the meal. The shinu mokum tzarech levarach shenis, because changing a place could trigger the need for a new bracha. K'sheshoysa achakach, u'mevu b'simen kufayin ches, v'imkein lo tikein klum. V'yivorech, v'kosu achrenim di'izoy lishtois pachos miravius, the mishter revius lo yoel klum b'tzikunoi, the yikonis specific bracha achrona ala mashkin ho'elu. The efshe the ein birchas hamazon petartiv. It could be if you drink only a very small amount that birchas hamazon won't cover it. The ein shayachim lesuda mekiven sheshasa keidu natila, because you drink a very small amount before natila, maybe it's not covered by the meal. If you're going to make a bracha on birchas hamazon on this strong drink, the birchas haberper nefashos Rabbi shevarach ala kois yifte gam ala mashkin shesosu kodim netilas daim, because afterwards, after the benching, you're going to have to make a berper nefashos on what you drink after benching. Al da'as lamed ches oy shevakish la'achar she'eno eichel shevarach ala mashka v'yischaven apoitrei. Or you get someone to pat you, that's always the solution. Now, the Ramah said, however, the minig is kasvar rishona, i.e., that you do not make standalone brachas on drinks during the meal. V'hatam kedil'el, and the reason is, says the Mishnah Berurah in Lamates, lefi she'ein achila b'lo shtiya, because you need to drink when you eat. And therefore anything we drink is considered machmas hasuda, or the Indian yain straf. If you have a strong drink, a whiskey or something like that, some say that you need to make a shahakal and a whiskey during the meal. You're not drinking it to quench your thirst. But the Mogan Avram writes, the B'tei Chasuda ein tzarech bracha, which is what our practice is. So you have a whiskey during the meal, you do not need to make a bracha on that. Mishum da'oz bala eret havis hamachal v'choshev gam zeh machmas hasuda. It encourages an appetite, and it's also considered machmas hasuda. V'uadin b'peres haboyim lahamshich tavis achila. It's also true, by the way, for fruit which you have during the meal. Even though generally for fruit during the meal, for dessert, you make a bracha on it, if the fruit is going to arouse an appetite, for example, you have some grapefruit for a starter. Many people say that's to arouse the appetite, and therefore that would not require a bracha because it's considered machmas hasuda. He gives other examples. It could go in lemons meluchim, salted lemons, or zayis moliach, or salted olives, or ugakus, cucumbers, pickles, meluchim, because these are meant to, as part of the meal, is to give you an appetite. There are opinions to do this. However, we are makel, and we've got what to rely on, and therefore that's our practice. We don't make brachas on any drinks during the meal. If you have a whiskey after the meal, there you're doing just to sort of help digest the meal. If you have a whiskey after the meal, then you have to make a bracha. If you only eat something to take away a taste or something in rogel binyan zeh, then you don't make a bracha. Even if you have a bit of a whiskey just to help the food go down or to take away a sharp taste, then you won't need to make a bracha. If you have a coffee after the meal, that's helped to digest the food. The answer is to have a little bit of a sweet or have a sugar lifter has a coffee. The chol shaykh rak in chol. The Shabbos v'yontav v'shachris ein shaykh kol zeh. Tar bevadai kva kiddush ala kois. You certainly made kiddush. U'manav shachim kiddush ala yain. And therefore, if you made kiddush on wine, halo poita kol hamashkin. That's going to certainly cover all other drinks anyway. Of even amuvulel b'siman k'tiv kosim gimel. V'im kiddush ala sheikh v'chiz b'zeh. Halo rosh shakol v'meila nifta gam b'zeh. Okay, and if you made a shakol, it will cover it anyway. Okay, b'seder.